How significant is this? I mean, and is it fair to say it has been an attack on that bridge from the Ukrainian side?
Well, I think that's probably the single clearest thing that can be said. But it's very important for two reasons. One of them is the logistical point that you made, that it's a key supply route for the Russians, for troops, military material, weapons. Everything has been coming across that bridge, especially the rail bit of the bridge. That's the first thing. But the second thing is equally important, which is that it's hugely symbolic. This is a bridge that was identified with Vladimir Putin from the very beginning. He said, after the annexation of Crimea, we have to build a bridge to the mainland to link the peninsula with mainland Russia. It was built in record time. It's supposed to be the longest bridge in Europe, though I think that's disputed.
But it does look very impressive, doesn't it?
It's 12 miles long.
Gosh.
And it has, we've seen it. It's got the road bridge running alongside the rail bridge. And for this to be damaged, even if it's temporarily damaged, it's not clear quite how substantial the damage has been, but for this to be damaged the day after Putin's 70th birthday, this is hugely symbolic. And you saw all the pictures of people in Ukraine looking at their mobiles, looking at the pictures and really saying, this is victory. That's the morale booster to Ukrainians. It's huge.
As it is said, when it was built, it was very much his pet project, as you say, from the beginning. And when it was built, he wanted to be the first to drive across it and did so.
And
so
he was, yes.
Furious about this, weren't he?
Absolutely. And what's interesting to me is that they say that they're boosting security. Well, it's one of those things which would have had enormous security already. But, we've all looked at it. It's incredibly difficult to have 100% security on something like that. It's going across the water. It's very difficult for me to see how you can get 100% security. But also, in my mind, it's hard to see Russia leaving this without some sort of revenge. Now, what are they going to do? Some people are looking at what's happened overnight and saying, there's been missile attacks on Zaporizhia, on a block of flats in Zaporizhia. Doesn't look to me as though that is necessarily a reprisal for the bridge. It's that sort of war as Russia has been waging it.
So you think if there is any instinct for repercussion, that Russia will be planning something bigger and bolder? Bigger and bolder, something more emblematic, something that has a sort of symbolic value equivalent to the symbolic value of the bridge. That's just my view. That may be wrong. But
I mean, strategically, is that a price worth paying? Will the Ukrainians have looked at this and said, well, that's a price worth paying for the fact that we are now being seen to be taking the fight to Russia?
Well, again, there's two aspects of this. One of them is, yes, it is. But there's a background to it as well, which is my understanding is that not quite since the beginning of the war, but almost, Ukraine has been asking for help and for sort of tacit approval from its Western allies to destroy the bridge. And either it didn't have the capability or the Western allies said, look, hang on here, this could be a problem, because if you need help, then it implicates us. If you don't need help, it's a symbolic thing. You have to realise this is a huge, huge risk. Now, that it has been done now, and one has to assume that it's Ukraine that's done it, has that policy changed?
And it's
very interesting.
Yeah, why would Ukraine, they've got so much else to think about, why would they think of damaging that bridge?
Because of the symbolic value. It's just so gigantic. I mean, it has the logistical point that it can hinder and block some of Russia's supplies to Ukraine. But at the moment, Russia has an alternative route because it occupies the southern bit of Ukraine that abuts Crimea. So at the moment, it has an alternative route.
But are they also saying, we're not going to just stop at what's happened this year, we're going to take Crimea back as well?
That's another very, very interesting point, because after about the first couple of months of the war, and Ukraine was doing better than most people had predicted, they started saying, well, we don't just want back the bits of our country that Russia has occupied like now, we want Crimea back, which was annexed in 2014, though the annexation wasn't recognised internationally, obviously. But as things have gone along, more and more Ukrainians have talked about the realistic proposition of getting Crimea back. Now, outside Ukraine, I think there's probably a general view that that would be extremely difficult and possibly inadvisable, that it will have to be one of these things that's sort of up for discussion if there are negotiations to end the war. But I can increasingly see a scenario where Crimea becomes more risky for Russia, that it becomes unsafe for Russia. This is the main base for its Black Sea fleet, its only warm water port. This is a major holiday destination for Russians. If they start feeling that it's unsafe, that it's vulnerable, that may be a bigger argument in favour of Ukraine one day getting it back than any military action.
Isn't that interesting? Mary Dziejewski, really good to talk to you. Thank you. Thank you for shedding a light on it, actually, because it just clarifies a lot of what is going on.
Actually, can I ask one more? Well, I was just thinking that you said that the bombing of that bridge will be so interesting because every Ukrainian will be looking on their mobile phone and have seen it. Will any Russians be looking on their mobile phone and seeing that, or would that be blocked in some way?
I mean, I don't think it would be blocked because, well, I mean, it probably won't be reported as such, but obviously the security measures are being reported so that Russians can draw their own conclusions. Also, a lot of Russians have, you know, they're bypassing the official media blocks and they're finding other ways on social media of finding information. So, yes.
So they'll be aware.
They'll be very well aware of that, yes.